My daughter-in-law had just given birth, but after seeing the baby, my granddaughter suddenly pulled me out of the room. "Grandma, that baby isn't my little brother." I froze. "Why would you say that? Last week I saw Uncle Dylan rubbing Mom's belly, and he called it his son." In that instant, I was paralyzed, trembling as I called my son. I'm glad you're here. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my revenge story from. I want to know how far it's reached. I walked into the maternity ward. The door creaked softly, and immediately the distinct smell of hospital disinfectant hit my nose. It wasn't a pleasant smell, but today it couldn't dim the joy flooding my heart. The room was bright white, the fluorescent lights reflecting off the spotless walls. In the center on the white bed was Lucy, my daughter-in-law. She looked exhausted, her hair stuck to her forehead with sweat, but her eyes shone as if they held an entire sky full of happiness. In her arms was a newborn baby, reddish, tiny, its lips moving as if it were dreaming of something. Beside the bed stood Alex, my son. He was tall, but that night he seemed fragile. His hands trembled as he stroked his wife's damp hair, and his eyes were a mix of pride and emotion. I looked at him and my heart warmed. My Alex, the boy I raised alone through so many hardships, was now a father. Little Maya, my beloved granddaughter, was glued to my side, gripping my hand tightly. She was wearing the pink princess dress I'd bought her for her 5th birthday, and her big eyes sparkled with curiosity. She was stretching up on her tiptoes, trying to get a better look at her little brother in her mother's arms. "Grandma, he's so tiny," Maya whispered with excitement. I smiled and stroked her head, feeling happiness overwhelm me. Maya was my light, the light of this whole family, and now the family had a new member. I thought that even though life was hard, it still gave me precious moments like this. A short while later, the door opened again. Dylan, Lucy's best friend, walked in with a bouquet of white lilies in his hands and a smile as bright as the morning sun. "Congratulations, you two," he said in a clear voice, stepping forward to hug Alex and pat his shoulder affectionately. I was a little surprised. Dylan had arrived way too fast, almost at the same time as us, as if he had been waiting right outside. But I immediately pushed that thought away. Dylan had always been a part of Lucy's life, almost like family. He always showed up at just the right moment with thoughtful gestures and warmth. Today was no exception. The room filled with noise. A camera clicked in the corner, where a relative was trying to capture the moment. Everyone was laughing, talking, the air thick with joy. A nurse came in with some papers for Alex, speaking to him in a kind but professional tone. Alex nodded, carefully reviewing each page, looking up every now and then to gaze tenderly at his wife and children. I just stood there, Maya's hand still in mine, letting the happiness wash over me completely. Everything seemed perfect, like the family scene I had always dreamed of. But then, in an almost imperceptible moment, I saw Dylan quietly approach the bassinet by the bed. He leaned over, looking at the baby with an expression I couldn't quite read. His lips curved into a strange smile, tender, but also enigmatic. I frowned, but then quickly convinced myself I was overreacting. Dylan had always been like this, attentive, close, as if this were his family too. I tried to shake off the unease creeping over me and turned to lift Maya into my arms. "Come on, let Grandma lift you up so you can see your little brother better," I said, forcing a cheerful tone. Maya squealed with delight, her little arms wrapping around my neck. But as soon as I brought her close to the bassinet, I felt something was wrong. Maya's little hands suddenly gripped my shoulders so tightly that it stopped me in my tracks. She pulled me out of the room, her steps hurried as if she were running from something. Surprised, I followed her quickly, trying to keep my voice gentle. "Maya, what's wrong, sweetie? Did something happen?" In the cold hospital hallway, Maya stopped, and her clear eyes were now red, glistening with tears. Her trembling voice whispered, as if revealing a terrible secret, "Grandma, that baby isn't my brother." I was paralyzed, as if the whole world had stopped spinning. I nearly stumbled and a sharp chill ran down my spine. "What are you saying, Maya?" I asked, trying to stay calm, though my voice was already starting to break. "Why do you think that?" Maya looked down, her small hands clutching my skirt. She mumbled in a choked voice, "Last week at the house, I saw Uncle Dylan touching Mommy's tummy, and he even told the baby in her belly that he was his son." The little girl's words were like a dagger straight to my heart. I stood there motionless, unable to believe what I had just heard. Dylan? Lucy's close friend, whom I had always considered harmless, someone loved by this whole family. An icy pain shot through my entire body as if my blood had frozen. I wanted to ask more, to press Maya, to see if she had misheard, but the newborn's cry echoed from inside the room, pulling me back to reality. I stood there, in the middle of the frigid hospital hallway, with the steady beep of a heart rate monitor behind the door. My trembling hands searched my coat pocket for my phone. I dialed Alex's number, but my fingers were shaking so much I almost dropped it. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I wasn't 64-year-old Carmen anymore. I was back to being the widow who once faced the world alone to raise Alex. My husband, Joe, died in a truck accident on the highway. That day, the sky over Springfield was gray, as if the whole world sensed the tragedy. Alex was barely 10, too young to understand that his father, whom he loved so much, would never come back. I remember the moment the police gave me the news perfectly. They stood in front of the house, their voices flat, announcing that Joe's truck had been hit head-on by a semi. I froze, holding Alex tight, feeling the ground crumble beneath my feet. I didn't cry in front of my son that night, but when he was asleep, I sat in the kitchen, hugging one of Joe's old shirts, letting the tears fall in silence. From then on, my life was a chain of heavy days. I'd get up at 3 in the morning, slipping out quietly to the market to load up vegetables. On those cold mornings, my hands would go numb picking up bunches of charred potatoes, anything I could sell to buy Alex's school notebooks. There were rainy days when, wearing a straw hat, I'd stand under the market roof, watching people pass by with a heavy heart. When the day was over, I'd rush to a nearby boarding house to do laundry. My hands were covered in calluses. The cracks in my skin would bleed at the touch of soap, but I couldn't stop. All I had to do was see Alex studying under the light of an oil lamp, carefully writing each letter for my strength to return. "Mom, I'm going to study hard so one day you won't have to suffer anymore," he told me with his determined little voice. Those words were the fire that kept me going through the darkest days. Alex understood things better than any child I'd ever known. He never asked for anything, though sometimes I saw the look in his eyes as he watched the neighborhood kids running around in their new shoes or on their shiny bikes. Once, I caught him scooping cold rice from the pot, mixing it with salt and hot sauce to eat instead of the beef stew I had purposely left for him. "You eat it, Mom. I'm already full," he told me. But I knew he just wanted me to have his share. Those moments filled me with pride and, at the same time, broke my heart. I told myself that even if I had to sacrifice my whole life, I would give my son a better future. Years passed, and Alex gave me reasons to be proud. He got into college, studied electrical engineering, and then landed a stable job at a big construction company. The day he got his degree, in his sharp suit and with a confident smile, I cried, not from sadness, but from happiness. He had done it just like he promised. "Mom, you can rest now. Let me take care of you," Alex said, squeezing my hand tightly. For the first time in many years, I felt like I could breathe easy, as if the weight on my shoulders had lightened a bit. The day Alex married Lucy, our little neighborhood in Springfield lit up like never before. Lucy was a beautiful, sweet girl with a warm smile and eyes full of life. I liked her from the moment I met her, though I sometimes wondered if she truly understood the hardships Alex and I had been through. The wedding was in the courtyard of a small church, where the whole neighborhood gathered, bringing simple gifts and sincere blessings. I was there, in the blue dress Alex had bought for me, watching my son take his wife's hand, my heart full of joy and a touch of nostalgia. Maybe I still wasn't used to our family having a new member. Dylan showed up at the wedding, always stuck to Lucy like a shadow. He was tall, handsome, with a radiant smile, and such a natural air about him that I found it strange. They were too close, almost like blood siblings, but there was something in the way Dylan looked at Lucy that piqued my curiosity. He carried luggage for relatives, cleared tables after the meal, and even ran out to buy more wine when the party was almost over. "Don't worry, Dylan is Lucy's close friend. He's gay," a relative whispered to me when she noticed me watching him. I nodded, relieved. I had been overthinking things. Dylan was just a good friend, I told myself, and I felt more at ease. After the wedding, Alex and Lucy moved in with me to the old 2-story house in Springfield. That house, though small, was the fruit of my sweat and tears to keep it standing. Now it was filled with laughter and conversation. Lucy adapted quickly. She used to help me in the kitchen, though she sometimes accidentally spilled a bowl of sauce. Alex was busy with work, but every night when he got home, he always found a moment to chat with me, asking if I was tired or if I needed anything. Seeing them together, so close, I felt I had everything a mother could dream of. Dylan started showing up more often. The familiar knock on the door would sound in the afternoons, accompanied by his bright smile and bags of fresh fruit. "Mrs. Carmen, I brought some oranges so you and Lucy can stay healthy," he'd say, placing the bag on the kitchen table. I'd smile, grateful for Dylan's thoughtfulness. He once even brought a jar of natural honey, saying it was good for my health. "You're getting older, you need to take care of yourself," Dylan said with a sincere voice. I looked at him and thought to myself that having a friend like him was truly valuable. On nights when Alex had to work late, I used to sit alone in the living room, watching TV with the volume low so as not to disturb Lucy. From the kitchen, I could hear her and Dylan talking and laughing like two lifelong friends. "Dylan, stop messing with me, I'm busy cooking," Lucy would say in a playful tone. I would smile, feeling the warmth of the scene. Dylan seemed to have become an essential part of Lucy's life, and of this family too. Once I caught him peeling apples for Lucy, while telling her something that made her laugh non-stop. "Mrs. Carmen, do you think I have a talent for storytelling?" Dylan asked me, his eyes shining. I nodded and let out a laugh. "You know how to make people happy," I replied. Alex was also very fond of Dylan. On some nights, the two men would sit on the porch, drinking beer and talking about football and work. I remember one time, Dylan came over completely drunk after a night out with Alex. My son helped him inside and let him sleep on the living room couch. That night, I made him a glass of lemonade and put it on the table. He lifted his head and mumbled, "Mrs. Carmen, you're so kind. Thank you." I just smiled and gave him a gentle pat on the shoulder. In that moment, I became even more convinced that Dylan was a trustworthy friend, a close companion to Lucy, and completely harmless. A year after Alex and Lucy's wedding, our little house in Springfield was filled with light on the day Maya was born. I still remember the anxiety of pacing back and forth in the hospital hallway, my legs tired but my heart beating so fast it felt like it would burst out of my chest. Alex was by my side, squeezing my hand tightly, his face pale with worry. "Mom, I'm so scared," he whispered in a shaky voice. I squeezed his hand and tried to smile to calm him, though I was trembling too. "Everything will be fine, son," I told him. But inside I was praying non-stop, asking God to watch over Lucy and the baby. When Maya's first cry echoed from the delivery room, loud and clear, I felt as if the whole world had lit up. Alex burst into tears like a child and hugged me, soaking my shoulder with his tears. "Mom, I'm a dad now," he sobbed, his voice choked. I couldn't hold back either, and tears rolled down my cheeks. It was the happiest moment of my life. After so many years of sacrifice, I was finally seeing my son become a father. We rushed into the room where Lucy lay with her face drenched in sweat, but glowing with pure joy. She held little Maya in her arms, her eyes lit up like 2 stars. "Mom, look at her, she's beautiful like an angel," Lucy said, weak but full of tenderness. I nodded, unable to speak, silently watching my tiny granddaughter squirming in her cloth diaper. Alex leaned down and, trembling, kissed his daughter's forehead. "Daddy's girl," he whispered, his voice full of pride. I just stood there, watching my son and my daughter-in-law, feeling my heart melt. The first time I held Maya in my arms, I felt the life force emanating from that tiny body. The baby was warm, her tiny hands gripping my finger tightly, as if telling me she had arrived to light up this life. I hugged Maya, softly humming a lullaby my mother used to sing as tears fell silently. "My little granddaughter, you are the light of this whole house," I murmured, not knowing if I was saying it to Maya or to myself. A short time later, the room door burst open and Dylan came in, carrying a teddy bear so big it covered half his body. His radiant smile lit up the room. "Congratulations! Look at this little angel," he exclaimed, leaving the bear in a corner and moving to hug Alex. I was surprised for a second. Just like that time in the hospital when the second baby was born. Dylan always appeared at just the right moment, as if he had a sixth sense that told him when our family needed his presence. But I quickly set that thought aside and smiled when Dylan asked to hold Maya. "Let me practice being a good uncle," he joked, his eyes sparkling. Lucy smiled, nodding, and Alex laughed, patting him on the shoulder. "If you're the uncle, she's definitely going to be spoiled rotten," Alex said, amused. I watched the scene with a warm heart. Dylan really was a great friend, I thought. As the days went by, Dylan's presence in my house became more and more frequent. He came over often, sometimes with a pot of chicken soup for Lucy, other times with a huge pack of diapers or a can of formula. "Mrs. Carmen, I know Lucy needs to eat well, let me help," Dylan would say with a sincere voice. I felt grateful, though I sometimes wondered why he was so thoughtful. There were afternoons when I was busy doing laundry in the backyard, and Dylan would stay inside playing with Maya, meowing like a cat or barking like a dog, making the little girl burst into laughter. "Uncle Dylan, do the elephant," Maya would demand, and Dylan would puff out his cheeks, raising his arms like a trunk, making me laugh from a distance. The neighbors started to comment with admiration. "Mrs. Carmen, you're so lucky, having Dylan who cares for you like family. He loves Maya as if she were his own," Mrs. Rose, my neighbor, told me as I was carrying vegetables to the market. I just smiled, nodding, and inside, I was thankful to have someone like Dylan around. When Alex had to travel for work for a few days, Dylan practically became the man of the house. He'd come over in the evenings, sometimes fixing the dripping faucet in the kitchen, other times installing a shelf in the bathroom. "Mrs. Carmen, this faucet has been broken for a while. I'll fix it," Dylan said with a wrench in his hand, sweat beading on his forehead. I watched him, feeling a mix of gratitude and a little admiration. Dylan was young, energetic, and always willing to help. Once I found him with Lucy, folding Maya's clothes in the living room, chatting and laughing. "How did you fold this t-shirt to look like a burrito?" Lucy teased him, and Dylan let out a laugh, replying, "I'm practicing to be a chef." I stood in the doorway, watching the peaceful scene. They got along like siblings, and I told myself again how lucky I was that Lucy had a friend like Dylan. One night during a bad storm, the whole neighborhood lost power. I was looking for candles in the kitchen when I heard an urgent knock on the door. Dylan appeared, soaked, with a large candle in one hand and several still warm rolls in the other. "Mrs. Carmen, I was worried you all would be hungry, so I brought some bread," he said in a clear voice. I handed him a towel to dry off, moved by his thoughtfulness. We had dinner by candlelight, with Maya sitting on his lap, excitedly telling him what she had done in kindergarten. "Uncle Dylan, today I drew a huge cat," the little girl bragged, and Dylan pretended to be surprised, his eyes wide. "Really? I have to see that drawing next time." Lucy laughed, and I, sitting there, felt the warmth of a complete family, even if it was under the dim light of a candle. Dylan's presence slowly became an indispensable part of this house. He was like an unofficial family member, sometimes even more attentive than our own relatives. Once, when my back was aching from folding laundry for too long, Dylan appeared silently with a bottle of massage oil. "Use this, Auntie. I bought it at the pharmacy. It's really good," he said, and turned away before I could thank him. Those gestures made me grow even fonder of him, and I started to see him as a second son. Maya grew up like a weed. She had bright eyes and a radiant smile, like the first rays of dawn. Every time I looked at her, I felt the house fill with life. "Grandma, tell me a princess story," she used to insist, and I would sit down, hold her in my lap, and tell her the same stories I had once told Alex when he was little. Looking at Maya, I saw the image of Alex as a child, obedient and full of hope. I thought silently that this little family had truly started a new chapter. There were a baby's cries, friends' laughter, a happiness that seemed impossible to break. When Maya turned 5, our house was once again filled with light, not just from the clear sky, but also from the joy of expecting a new family member. One early morning, while I was making coffee in the kitchen and the aroma of freshly ground beans filled the air, Lucy came in with a pregnancy test in her hand. She shyly showed it to me, her eyes moist, her lips pressed together as if trying to hold back an intense emotion. When I looked down, I clearly saw 2 red lines, and my heart started to leap with joy. "Lucy, are you really pregnant?" I asked, my voice trembling with excitement. She nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks, and threw her arms around me. "Mom, I'm so happy," she whispered, and I couldn't hold back either. I hugged her tightly, feeling as if the whole world was smiling on our family. I had her sit next to me, not letting go of her hand, my heart full of joy and a little worry. "Are you feeling okay? Are you very tired?" I asked, searching her eyes for any sign of exhaustion. Lucy shook her head and smiled sweetly. "I'm fine, Mom, just a little nervous." I nodded, understanding the feeling. Being a mother for the first time was already a journey full of emotions, let alone now, expecting her second child. I gently stroked her hair and whispered, "I'll always be here, don't you worry." In that moment, I felt I wasn't just a mother-in-law, but also a companion on her journey, ready to share every joy and every fear with her. When Alex got home and heard the news, I had never seen him so happy. He was practically jumping with excitement, his eyes shining like a child receiving a gift. "Mom, I'm going to have another kid," he shouted and ran out to the market, coming back with a huge bag full of fruit, apples, oranges, mangoes, as if he wanted us to celebrate with a fruit feast. He even called his boss to ask for half a day off, just to stay home with Lucy. I watched him bustling around, making orange juice for his wife, constantly asking her if she was craving anything, and I couldn't help but laugh with tenderness and pride. My son is a real man now, I thought, my heart warm as I saw him so devoted to his wife. And as usual, Dylan showed up right after, as if he had a special sense for knowing when our family received good news. He knocked on the door with a cake box in his hand, and on top, he had carefully written in frosting, "Congratulations to the family that will soon have a new member." "Mrs. Carmen, Alex, Lucy, congratulations to all of you," Dylan exclaimed with a radiant smile that lit up the room. I smiled, feeling the sincerity in his voice, but deep in my heart, a faint premonition sparked. Dylan always appeared at just the right moment, always attentive, but why did I still feel an invisible distance between his closeness and what I really knew about him? From that day on, Dylan started coming to the house more frequently. Some mornings, when Alex had to go to distant construction sites, Dylan would offer to take Lucy to her prenatal checkups. "Alex is busy. I'll take her. Don't worry, ma'am," he would tell me in a soft but responsible tone. I would nod grateful, though an hard-to-explain feeling washed over me. Once, standing in the backyard, I looked through the window and saw Dylan place his hand on Lucy's belly, joking, "I'm sure it's a little boy this time, right, champ?" Lucy laughed loudly, showing no discomfort at all, and replied, "If you're wrong, I'm going to make you buy formula for a whole year." I stood there, forcing a smile, but inside I felt a slight unease. They were so close, like siblings, but why did something tell me that not everything was right? At meals, Dylan always served Lucy, sometimes a piece of stewed meat, sometimes some boiled vegetables. "Eat more, you have to be strong to feed the baby," he would say in a joking tone. Alex would just laugh, even teasing him back. "You take better care of my wife than I do." "Dylan," Everyone laughed and I tried to join in, but deep down, I started to wonder if Dylan's attention was really just friendship. When relatives came to visit, they all praised Alex's luck for having two wonderful helpers. Me, the ever-present mother, and Dylan, his wife's friend, always ready to help. "Mrs. Carmen, your home is truly blessed," Mrs. Rose, the neighbor, would say with admiration. I would smile, nod, but inside, I carried a weight I didn't yet dare to name. I started to fix up the small room on the second floor that we used to use for storage. I cleaned the dust off the wooden crib that Dylan had brought in his truck. "Mrs. Carmen, this crib is very sturdy. I'll bring it over for the baby," Dylan said as he delivered it, his eyes shining. I thanked him, but when I was alone in the room hanging some newly bought white curtains, a strange melancholy washed over me. This room, this crib, everything was ready for a new life, but why couldn't I feel completely at ease? Maya, on the other hand, was thrilled with her role as a big sister. She spent her days carrying her old doll, pretending to change its diapers, give it milk, and even insisted I teach her how to hold a baby. "Grandma, how do I hold him so he doesn't cry?" She asked me with her big, bright eyes. I sat next to her and showed her how to support the doll's head, how to pat its back, my heart full of tenderness and a bit of nostalgia. "You're going to be a wonderful sister," I told her, stroking her hair. In the afternoons, Dylan would often take her to the nearby park, teaching her to ride a bike or pushing her on the swing. "Uncle Dylan, higher!" Maya would shout, laughing her head off. I watched them from a distance, grateful that he brought my granddaughter so much joy. But every time I saw him playing with Maya, a question would creep back into my mind. Why did Dylan dedicate so much time to our family? That night, the whole family gathered on the porch, drinking hot tea under the dim moonlight. Alex wrapped his arms around Lucy's shoulders, his voice full of pride. "Our family will soon be 4. Mom." Lucy smiled, snuggling against her husband, while Maya sat on my lap, hugging her doll and chattering about the little brother she imagined. I smiled, my heart overflowing with joy, believing that another child would make this home even more complete. Suddenly, Alex's voice on the phone brought me back to reality. "Mom, what's wrong?" "Where'd you go?" "I saw Maya pull you outside." I hesitated, wanting to tell him everything, but I held back, afraid of unjustly accusing someone innocent. Dylan often joked with Lucy like that. Maybe Maya had just misunderstood. "It's nothing, son." I misdialed. I hung up and walked down the hospital hallway, but each step felt as heavy as if I were carrying stones. In the days after Lucy gave birth to little Jamie, the atmosphere in our little house in Springfield was always full of life. The baby's cries mixed with everyone's laughter and chatter, like a cheerful melody, but inside me, a storm of doubt was quietly brewing. Every time I looked at Jamie, with his reddish skin and his eyes still closed, I tried to find some resemblance to Alex. But the more I looked, the tighter my chest felt. Maya's whisper in the hospital kept echoing in my head, like a thorn stuck in my heart, impossible to remove. One early morning, as the first rays of sun filtered through the window, I was folding laundry in the living room when I heard a familiar knock on the door. Dylan came in, carrying a bag of diapers and a can of formula, chattering away. "Auntie Carmen, I'm worried Alex is too busy and can't get to everything. So I came to lend a hand." He smiled brightly, as if nothing in the world could trouble him. I nodded, forcing a smile in return, though a strange discomfort washed over me. Dylan went straight to the kitchen, opened the cabinet as if it were his own house, and started preparing Jamie's bottle with surprising skill. "I can do this in a flash, Auntie, don't you worry," he said, winking at me. I just nodded, but his gaze, the natural way he moved like he owned the place, sent a shiver down my spine. In that instant, memories came rushing back, sharp as an old film. I remembered so many times Dylan had shown up at the house, always confident, always close. Once, he opened the refrigerator to get a bottle of water, as if it were the most normal thing in the world, then sat on the couch with Maya on his lap, watching cartoons together. "Uncle Dylan, do the Mr. Whale voice," Maya shouted, and Dylan laughed heartily. imitating a deep voice, making the little girl giggle. At the time, I saw it as the closeness of a good friend, but now, every memory seemed to fit like a piece of a puzzle I didn't dare to look at completely. One afternoon a few years ago, while I was hanging laundry in the yard, I heard Maya's laughter from the kitchen. Curious, I looked through the window and saw Dylan wearing Lucy's scarf on his head. Pretending to be Miss Lucy to make Maya laugh, Lucy was beside them, laughing and shaking her head. "If you were an actor, you'd definitely be famous, Dylan." Maya hugged Dylan's leg, looked up at him with her bright eyes and said innocently, "Uncle, you look a lot like my daddy." Back then I just smiled, thinking that children say the most adorable things. But now, those words pierced me like a dagger, awakening a vague unease. Looked like Alex, or maybe something more. Another memory surfaced, clearer than ever. It was a night of heavy rain when Alex was on a 3-day work trip at a distant site. The whole neighborhood lost power, and I was looking for candles when Dylan knocked on the door, soaked from head to toe with a flashlight in his hand. "Mrs. Carmen, I came to see if everyone was okay," he said, and immediately checked the circuit breaker in the corner of the house. When the power came back on, I saw Dylan and Lucy sitting in the living room, talking in low voices late into the night. "Remember that time we went camping? We almost got lost that time," Dylan said, laughing loudly. Lucy nodded, her eyes shining, and replied, "You really are an expert at getting into trouble." I was standing in the kitchen doorway, watching them, thinking it was just a close friendship. But now, looking back, I wonder, why did they talk for so long when it was just the 3 of us in the house? The image of Dylan touching Lucy's belly when she was pregnant with Jamie came back to my mind, as clear as if it were happening right in front of me. "My son," he had joked with a radiant smile. At the time, I thought it was just a meaningless comment, an innocent joke. Lucy had laughed out loud, and Alex had clapped Dylan on the shoulder, saying, "If you claim my son as yours, I'll sue you." Everyone laughed, and I joined in the joy. But now, every time I remember those words, a chill runs down my spine. Maya's words in the hospital were like a key, unlocking the doubts I had tried to bury. That night, when everyone else was asleep, I sat by Jamie's crib, gently rocking him until he closed his eyes. The dim moonlight filtered through the window, illuminating his small face. I leaned over to look at him closely, searching for any of Alex's features, his warm brown eyes, his straight nose, or the smile I always recognized in my son. But the more I looked, the more I noticed something strange. The high bridge of his nose, the slight upward tilt of his eyes at the corners. How could he look so much like Dylan? I stood motionless, gripping the edge of the crib, feeling my heart constrict in my chest. "It can't be," I repeated to myself, trying to banish the thought. But every piece of the past, the times Dylan showed up, the moments that were too close with Lucy, started to fit together, forming a terrifying picture I didn't want to face. One weekend afternoon, our little house was filled with warm yellow light. We were all gathered in the living room. The atmosphere couldn't have been more cheerful. Alex, clumsy but happy, held Jamie in his arms. The little one was sleeping peacefully, his mouth moving as if in a dream. Lucy was bustling about, clearing the table, while the clinking of plates mixed with Maya's clear laughter as she played parcheesi with me. "Grandma, I beat you!" the little girl shouted, lifting her chin proudly as her green piece passed mine. I smiled, stroking her hair, trying my best to enjoy that happy moment, even though a dark wave was churning silently inside me. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and Dylan came in with a box of still warm custard, the sweet smell of caramel filling the room. "Here's my specialty for the family to enjoy," he said with a smile as bright as the sun. Alex let out a laugh and clapped him on the shoulder. "You always know how to cheer us up, Dylan." Lucy also turned, her eyes lighting up. "If you opened a bakery, you'd be rich." Dylan winked and replied, "If it's for you guys, I don't need to be rich." Everyone laughed, and for a moment, I tried to convince myself that everything was still normal, that the doubts inside me were just the product of an old, fearful mind. During the meal, Dylan was as lively as ever. He served Lucy a piece of stew, joking, "Eat up so the baby grows up strong and healthy." Lucy smiled, nodding gratefully, while Maya kept insisting that Dylan tell a joke. "Uncle Dylan, tell the story of the singing cat," she begged. And Dylan imitated a meowing cat, making Maya burst into laughter. Alex was there, watching the scene with eyes full of affection. But I couldn't join in that joy. Every time Dylan served Lucy food, every time he looked at Jamie with tenderness, a shiver ran down my spine. The words whispered by Maya in the hospital kept repeating in my head, an echo impossible to silence. Uncle Dylan called the baby his son. After dinner, Alex went out to the balcony to take a work call, his deep voice mixing with the night wind. Lucy was busy breastfeeding Jamie, sitting in a corner stroking him gently. Dylan was still at the table, sipping some orange juice, chatting with Maya about a new animated movie. Suddenly, his phone rang. He answered and his expression changed. He spoke hurriedly. Yeah, I'm on my way." He stood up, apologized. "Auntie Carmen, I have an urgent matter. I have to go. Thanks for dinner." I nodded, watching, as Dylan rushed out, leaving a half-finished glass on the table with a faint lip print on the rim. As I was cleaning up, my eyes stopped on that glass. A bold, almost crazy idea crossed my mind. I stood motionless, the rag in my hand, feeling my heart beat faster than ever. What if that glass could be the key to clearing up the doubts that were eating me alive? I looked around, making sure no one was watching, and carefully took the glass, wrapped it in a clean plastic bag, and hid it under the bed in my room, my heart pounding as if I had just committed a crime. What am I doing? I asked myself, but deep down, I knew I couldn't stop. I needed the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The next morning, while Alex took Lucy and the kids for their routine checkup, I left the house quietly. I had everything ready. A few strands of Maya's hair I'd collected from her pillow, a tiny piece of Jamie's nail I'd carefully clipped while he slept, and a blood sample from Alex that I had gotten from the hospital after his donation. I took the bag with the glass and went out into the street, feeling like the whole world was watching me. When I got to the DNA lab, I explained to the employee, my voice trembling, "I need to know if the baby is my son's child." The young woman looked at me surprised, but seeing the plea of an old woman like me, she nodded, took the samples, and promised to process them as soon as possible. The following days felt like an eternity. I would get up early to make breakfast, take Maya to school, talk and laugh with Lucy as if nothing was wrong. But inside, I was burning up. Every time I looked at Jamie, I saw Dylan's eyes, and every time Lucy smiled at Alex, I wondered if she was hiding something. One afternoon, Dylan came to visit again and picked up Jamie, playing with him. "This little guy is growing up fast, isn't he, Auntie Carmen?" he said, looking at him tenderly. I nodded, but my skin crawled. The way Dylan looked at him, the way he gently stroked his hair, was unbearable to me. I turned away, pretending to be busy cleaning the table, just to hide my trembling hands. I kept it all inside, not daring to say anything to anyone. I was scared that if I told, this family would fall apart. But I couldn't live forever with the doubts that were gnawing at me day after day. Every night, lying in my bed, I would stare at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that I was exaggerating, that Maya was just a child, that Dylan was nothing more than a good friend. But then, the image of the glass, with that barely visible lip print, would reappear, a reminder that I couldn't keep running. One rainy afternoon, as I sat on the porch watching the raindrops slide down the window pane, my phone rang. The calm voice of the lab employee echoed on the other end. "Mrs. Carmen, the results are ready. You can come pick them up anytime." I gripped the phone tightly, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would jump out of my chest. I whispered a thank you, but after hanging up, my whole body went numb. I knew the moment to face the truth had come, and that whatever the result, it would change everything. That same afternoon, under a persistent rain, I walked quickly to the lab, carrying an old umbrella I didn't even open, letting the water soak my clothes. The young lab employee, with a serious expression, handed me a white envelope. "You should find a place to sit before you open it," she said, her voice soft but full of warning. I nodded, though my legs felt like stone. I sat on a cold plastic chair in the corner of the waiting room, and with trembling hands, I tore open the paper. The letters danced before my eyes, blurry and jumbled, but the conclusion was as clear as a razor's edge. Maya and little Jamie shared a father-child bond with a DNA sample from Dylan's glass, and neither of them had any blood ties to Alex. My world fell apart. I felt the floor open up beneath me, pulling me into a bottomless abyss. The paper slipped from my hands and fell to the floor, but I didn't pick it up. I just sat there, dizzy, my eyes blurred with tears. Dylan, whom I had considered a second son, whom the whole family trusted, turned out to be the one who betrayed us. And Lucy, my dear daughter-in-law, had hidden a devastating secret from me. Maya, Jamie, the grandchildren I loved more than my own life, were not Alex's children. I clutched my chest, feeling my heart tear apart, each beat hurting as if it were my last. That night when I got home, I tried to keep a calm expression as if nothing had happened. Lucy was cradling Jamie, rocking him gently under the dim lamplight. Alex was adjusting the rail of the crib, muttering that he needed to buy more screws. I stood in the doorway, watching them, forcing a smile that my lips refused to form. "Mom, have you had dinner? I left a plate for you in the kitchen," Lucy said in her usual sweet tone. I nodded, avoiding her gaze, afraid that if I held it for a second longer, I would scream the whole truth. At the table, Maya was cheerfully recounting her day at school, her voice as clear as bells. "The teacher said my little brother looks more like Uncle Dylan than Daddy, Grandma," she commented, her eyes shining. Her words pierced my heart like a sharp needle. I felt a lump in my throat, and the rice in my mouth turned bitter, impossible to swallow. Alex laughed, loudly stroking her head. "Oh, this kid. The teacher was just joking." But Lucy, I noticed, froze, a flash of panic in her eyes before she quickly looked away. I gripped my chopsticks tightly, breathing deeply to keep from losing control. Maya's innocent words, without her knowing it, were another stab that confirmed my screaming suspicions. The next morning, I asked Lucy to meet me at a small coffee shop near the house. I chose a secluded corner where no one could hear us. When she arrived, I placed the white envelope on the table, my hand shaking so much it made the coffee spill a little. "Lucy, I need to talk to you," I said in a low but firm voice. She looked at the envelope, then at me with a surprised expression. "What is it, Mom?" she asked softly. I took a deep breath, gathered all my courage, and pushed the envelope towards her. "Read it. This is the result of the DNA test." Lucy took the envelope, opened it, and I watched her face turn pale. But then she let out a bitter, twisted laugh. "That's impossible. You're wrong. Dylan can't have kids. He's sterile," she said, her voice shaky but confident. I shook my head, looking her straight in the eye. "Lucy, this result is real. Maya and Jamie are not Alex's children. They're Dylan's." My voice broke, but I forced myself to say it all. Lucy froze, and then she suddenly became furious. "Are you accusing me of something I didn't do?" She nearly shouted, causing several people in the coffee shop to turn and look at us. "Dylan is my best friend, you know that." "He would never do that." I tried to stay calm, though I was burning inside. "Lucy, I didn't want to believe it either, but the truth is right here," I said, pointing to the paper. She shook her head forcefully, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're wrong. You don't understand anything." Our argument started to draw attention, and I knew I couldn't continue. I stood up silently, took the envelope, and left the coffee shop, my heart heavy with helplessness. Lucy was still there, her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. When I got home, I stood by the window. looking out at the yard where Alex was playing with Maya. The little girl was running, her clear laughter filling the air, but every sound was like a stab in my chest. Alex lifted her into his arms, spun her around, and the girl squealed with excitement. "Daddy, do it again!" I pressed my lips together, holding back tears. Alex loved Maya and Jamie with all his heart, and I knew that if this truth came out, he would be shattered. I gripped the curtain tightly, feeling the whole world closing in on me. I wanted to confront Lucy. I wanted to face Dylan, but I couldn't. Not for me, but for Alex. My son trusted Lucy completely, and I knew that if I told him, he wouldn't be able to handle it. He had to find out and face it for himself. In the days after that conversation at the coffee shop, the house became more suffocating than ever. The place, once filled with Maya's laughter and Jamie's cries, was now heavy with a tense silence, as if there were an invisible wall between Lucy and me. She avoided my gaze, and every time I asked her something, she responded coldly. "Mom, I'm busy with Jamie. Ask me tomorrow," she'd say, and walk away with the baby in her arms. I would just stand there watching her back, my heart aching. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her why. But every time I opened my mouth, the image of Alex laughing with Maya would come to mind and stop me. I was scared that the truth would destroy everything, that it would steal my son's smile. One night, as I sat knitting a sweater for Jamie under the dim lamplight, Alex came into the living room, his eyes full of worry. He sat next to me, his hands clasped together, and said in a low voice, "Mom, what's going on between you and Lucy? You two have been acting really strange." I froze, nearly dropping my knitting needle. I looked into his eyes and saw sincerity, but also confusion. "It's nothing, son," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Lucy and I probably just had a misunderstanding." But Alex's look told me he didn't believe me. He nodded, though he frowned as if a seed of doubt had already taken root in his heart. I clenched the yarn tightly, my chest tight, knowing I couldn't keep this secret forever. A few days later, Alex suddenly said to me at breakfast, "Mom, I think I should get a full checkup. I need to make sure I'm healthy enough to take care of Maya and Jamie." His tone was casual, but I heard the anxiety in his voice. I nodded and, forcing a smile, said, "Yes, get a checkup. Better to be safe." But inside me, a dark wave was stirring. I knew that if Alex got himself checked, the truth could come out, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face the consequences. I went with him to the hospital, sat in the waiting room with my old cloth purse in my hands, praying that things wouldn't turn out as bad as I feared. On the day of the results, Alex and I sat in the doctor's office, in an atmosphere so heavy you could barely breathe. The doctor, an older man with thick glasses, leafed through the file and then sighed, his eyes full of regret. "I'm very sorry to inform you, Mr. Miller," he said in a grave voice. "The results show that you are congenitally infertile. Your sperm count is practically zero. There is no possibility of conceiving naturally." Alex sat motionless like a statue, his face pale and his eyes empty. I took his hand, feeling his cold skin in mine, while my heart pounded violently in my chest. "Doctor, are you sure?" Alex asked, his voice cracking as if clinging to a thread of hope. The doctor nodded with a compassionate expression. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Miller." On the bus ride home, Alex sat by the window, his gaze lost in the distance. He was clutching the results so tightly the paper was crumpled. I wanted to say something to comfort him, but I had a lump in my throat that wouldn't let me speak. Then, as if he couldn't take it anymore, Alex murmured, his voice broken, "If that's true, then Maya and Jamie, whose kids are they?" That question was like a knife, not only piercing his soul, but also tearing my heart apart. I took his hand, wanting to reassure him that everything would be okay, but I knew that nothing ever could be again. When we got home, Alex went silently into his room and took out all the photo albums from the wedding and of Maya when she was a baby. He sat on the floor, going through page after page, photo after photo, as if searching for some sign that would disprove the truth. I stood in the doorway, my heart in pieces, watching him. The more he looked, the stranger his expression became, as if he was starting to notice that Maya's and Jamie's features didn't resemble his. "Mom, look," he said in a trembling voice, pointing to a picture of Maya. "The girl, she doesn't have my nose or my eyes." I pressed my lips together, unable to answer, and just sat beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder as a form of comfort. That night, the atmosphere in the house grew sick, so heavy it was hard to breathe. Lucy was washing dishes in the kitchen, while I played with Maya in the living room, trying to keep the little girl from noticing how strange things were. But then Alex walked in, with the test results in his hand. He threw the paper on the table, right in front of Lucy, and with a hoarse voice, forcing out each word, he said, "Explain it to me. Whose kids are Maya and Jamie?" Lucy turned pale, her hands trembled, and she dropped a plate, which shattered with a dry crack. What are you saying?" She stammered, trying to deny it, but when she looked at the paper, she burst into tears and screamed, "It's all a misunderstanding. You have to believe me." Alex said nothing, just stood there with a cold, terrifying look in his eyes. I had never seen my son like this, like a stranger filled with pain and rage. Maya, hearing the noise, ran out of her room, clung to her father's shirt, and asked in a frightened voice, "Daddy, why are you yelling at Mommy? What did she do wrong?" Alex quickly wiped away his tears, knelt down to hug the little girl, but I saw his shoulders shake, as if he were holding back a torrent of emotions. "It's nothing, sweetie," he whispered, but his voice broke, unable to hide the pain. I stood off in a corner, feeling clearly that my family's tragedy had just begun. Lucy fell to her knees on the floor, clutching the hem of Alice's shirt, as tears streamed down her face like rain. "You have to believe me. I didn't mean for this to happen. I really didn't know." She sobbed, her voice choked, begging for a chance to save everything. But Alex's gaze, red with anger and suffering, just watched her with a coldness I had never seen in my son. "Then tell me, whose are they?" Alex growled, gripping the arm of the chair so tightly that the veins stood out on his forehead. His voice was hoarse, as if each word was tearing his own heart apart. I stood there, my heart pounding, feeling the floor shake beneath my feet. I wanted to run to him, to hug him, but my legs wouldn't move. Lucy lowered her head, her shoulders trembling, and after a suffocating silence, she cried out in desperation, "They're Dylan's!" I wasn't with anyone else, only him. And she buried her face in the floor, crying so hard it shattered the silence. Alex shot up, slammed his hand on the table, and the cups rattled loudly. "Since when?" he shouted, unbearable pain in his voice. Lucy, still kneeling, cried as she told him through sobs. She spoke of a party with friends years ago, when she drank too much and woke up next to Dylan. He kept apologizing. He swore no one would ever know. Lucy said, her hands covering her face. She explained that after that, Dylan sought her out several times with the excuse of just letting off steam, and deceived her by saying he had taken hormone injections and was sterile. I believed him. I loved him like a close friend. I never thought... Her voice broke into a sob. I stood there listening to every word, my soul on fire. Each sentence from Lucy was like a knife, not just plunged into Alex, but into my heart as well. Dylan, whom I had seen as a second son, turned out to be the one who had betrayed this entire family. And Lucy, the daughter-in-law I loved so much, had faltered, letting a blind friendship cloud her judgment. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her why she let it go so far, but I couldn't. I just stood there, clenching my fists, feeling the whole world collapse. Alex let out a bitter laugh, a smile loaded with resentment, and his gaze turned colder than ever. "Gay, sterile, you really believed all those lies?" he asked, his voice trembling with fury. Lucy could only cover her face, sobbing. "I always thought Maya and Jamie were your children. I never wanted to betray you. You have to believe me." But Alex just shook his head, his eyes empty, as if all the love and trust he once had for Lucy had vanished. Suddenly Maya ran out of the next room, her eyes bewildered, her little hand clutching my leg. "Grandma, why is Mommy crying?" she asked, her voice trembling and her eyes wide with confusion. I immediately picked her up, held her tight against my chest, trying to hide my own pain. "It's nothing, sweetie. "Mommy's just a little tired," I whispered, carrying her to her room and closing the door. I sat on the bed, singing her a lullaby to get her to sleep, but Lucy's heartbreaking sobs from the living room kept seeping in, a reminder that this family's happiness was now broken. I stroked Maya's hair, watching her slowly fall asleep while my heart felt heavy. That child, my beloved granddaughter, didn't carry Alex's blood, but she was still my light, and I wondered, how could I protect her from this storm? At dawn, as the dim moonlight streamed through the window, I heard noises from Alex and Lucy's room. I went into the hallway and saw Alex packing a suitcase, each movement firm but full of pain. The bedroom door slammed shut, and Lucy ran after him, clinging to her husband's hand. "Alex, don't kick me out. Don't leave us. Do it for Maya, for Jamie," she pleaded, soaked in tears. But Alex pushed her away roughly, his voice icy. "Don't you ever call them my kids again. Now get out of this house." His voice rang out sharply, like a dagger cutting off all hope at the root. Lucy collapsed in the middle of the hallway, a choked sob in her throat, as Alex slammed the door, and his heavy footsteps echoed in the stillness of the night. A few weeks after that fateful night, I found myself in front of the family court building in downtown Springfield. The atmosphere inside was cold, the smell of old paper mixing with the dry echo of footsteps on the stone floor. I sat next to Alex, feeling the tension radiating from my son. He sat upright, his hands clasped tightly, his gaze fixed on the floor, as if he didn't want to face anyone. On the other side of the room, Lucy held Jamie in her arms. Her face was gaunt, exhausted, and her eyes were red as if she had cried all night. Maya sat in the back row next to a distant relative, her crystalline eyes filled with sadness, looking around as if trying to understand what was happening. I watched her, my heart in pieces. Maya, my little light, didn't deserve to carry this pain. The hearing began, and Alex's lawyer stood up, his voice clear and calm. "My client, Alex Miller, is filing for divorce. He will not claim any assets and is willing to grant full custody of the two children, Maya and Jamie, to Mrs. Lucy Miller." Those words echoed dryly like a hammer blow straight to my heart. I glanced at Alex and saw his hands trembling on his legs. He kept his face down, silent, but I knew a storm of pain was raging inside him. Lucy broke down crying, her sobs echoing in the quiet room. She looked up at Alex, her voice pleading. "Alex, at least keep Maya. She loves you more than anyone. You can't leave her." Her words tore through the air, and I saw Alex clench his fists, as if trying to hold back a wave of emotions. But he didn't raise his head, didn't answer. He just sat there, motionless as a statue. I wanted to reach out and touch my son's shoulder, to tell him everything would be okay, but I knew nothing could soothe his pain in that moment. The judge's gavel came down, sharp and firm, declaring Alex and Lucy's marriage dissolved. It all happened so fast I barely had time to process it. Lucy picked up Jamie, her eyes red, and staggered out of the courtroom, her shoulders shaking with sobs. I watched her, my heart torn between anger and compassion. Even though Lucy had betrayed Alex, had betrayed this family, I couldn't bring myself to hate her completely. She was the mother of Maya and Jamie, the children I loved more than my own life. But now, everything was just broken pieces that couldn't be fixed. Alex stood up and hurried out of the room, as if fleeing from it all. I followed him with hurried steps, my heart heavy. Then a small, childish voice called out from behind us, "Daddy!" I turned and saw Maya let go of a relative's hand and run towards him, hugging his legs. Tears streamed down her face as her small hands gripped his pants tightly. "I want to go home with you, Daddy," she sobbed, her voice trembling. Alex froze. His big, strong body seemed to turn to stone. I saw his shoulders shake, his eyes red, but he was still trying to hold it together, not wanting his daughter to see him weak. After a difficult internal struggle, Alex slowly bent down, looking deeply into Maya's clear eyes. "Maya, sweetie," he murmured, his voice choked. I saw tears roll down his cheeks for the first time since the truth came out. A stifled sob escaped his chest. He lifted Maya into his arms, held her tightly against his heart, and whispered, "Okay, let's go home. Princess." His voice was low but full of love, as if all the pain and anger melted away at the sight of his daughter's eyes. I walked closer, tears streaming down my face as well. Maya reached out her other little hand and took mine, warm and small, like a ray of light in the darkness. 3 generations, me, Alex, and Maya, joined hands and walked out of the heavy courthouse doors together. The evening light illuminated the stone steps, warm and soft, as if trying to heal the wounds inside us. I lifted my head, took a deep breath, feeling an invisible weight lift. My soul felt strangely light, even though a broken drama was left behind me. As we walked, Maya skipped between us, pulling Alex with one hand and me with the other. "Grandma, will you tell me a princess story tonight?" she said in a clear voice, as if nothing had happened. I smiled and nodded, though I still felt a pain in my chest. Alex looked at Maya, his gaze softened, and I knew that even though the truth had shattered his heart, his love for his daughter remained intact. "What do you want for dinner tonight, princess?" Alex asked, his voice tender. Maya beamed. "Pizza! Daddy makes the best pizza in the world." Alex let out a laugh, the first in many weeks, and I saw a small spark of light shine in his eyes. On the way home, I thought silently about the days that had passed, about the pain our family had endured. The truth about Maya and Jamie was a harsh blow, but it also taught me something. Blood isn't everything. Love, compassion, and togetherness are what truly hold a family together. Maya, even though she doesn't carry Alex's blood, is still his daughter, still my granddaughter. And Jamie, though he's with Lucy now, will always be a part of my heart. We walked under the golden light of the sunset, the shadows of the 3 of us stretching long on the path. I looked at Alex and saw him holding Maya's hand tightly, his eyes full of determination. I knew then that my son would overcome this pain, not because he was strong, but because he had Maya, he had me, and because love still burned inside him. I squeezed the little girl's hand, feeling the warmth of that tiny hand, and made a silent promise to myself. No matter how hard life gets, I will always be here, protecting this small family, guarding the last spark of light we still have. Looking back on everything I've been through, I understood the greatest lesson of my life. The truth can be cruel, but only by facing it can we escape the vicious cycle of lies and suffering. Love, trust, and family are sacred things, but if they are built on deceit, they will eventually crumble. I want to tell everyone to have the courage to live authentically, to be honest with yourselves and with those you love. Don't let a moment of weakness or a sweet lie destroy an entire home. Because in the end, what remains is not who was right or who was wrong, but who was strong enough to preserve their dignity, to protect the love and values that endure in life. The story you have just heard has had its names and locations changed to protect the identities of the people involved. We are not telling it to judge, but in the hope that someone will listen and stop to reflect. How many mothers are suffering in silence inside their own homes? I truly wonder. If you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to stay silent to keep the peace? Or would you dare to face it all to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion, because every story can become a candle that lights the way for another. God always blesses, and I'm sure that courage will lead us to better days. Right now, on the end screen, I'll leave 2 of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm sure they will surprise you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.